Hey everyone, this is Keith Mossberg from Datrium. I'll be co-hosting this webinar with Pete Sacco of PTS Data Center Solutions. Today we're going to talk about how you can achieve a software-only SaaS, software as a service, disaster recovery for any of your VMware workloads running anywhere in your data center. Pete, would you like to take a second to introduce yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Keith. I appreciate it. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today. PTS is an interesting company. I know a lot of people say that, but we've been bringing a hybrid cloud to enterprise now for over 20 years. We're a unique company in that we're an IT service provider and doing managed hosting and disaster recovery as a service that we're going to be talking today, as well as just IT managed services. But we've also been building data centers and mission-critical facilities for 20-plus years. And so that puts us in a unique position to understand really the needs of a hybrid cloud world where some of your data center is on site, some of your data center is in co-location, and some of your operations are in the public cloud. We understand all those verticals very well, have experts across all of them, and Datrium today we're going to talk about the DRaaS portion of it, which is becoming an ever more important part of the portfolio. So, Keith, I'll hand it back to you. We'll go right into it, and I'm sure we'll both have comments.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, I apologize if I didn't introduce myself fully earlier. I'm Keith Mossberg. I'm a senior solution engineer with Datrium. I've been in and around converged, hyper-converged, and business continuity disaster recovery solutions for the last 15 years. So I've kind of seen it all. And this is the, so I'm being a part of Datrium. I'm taking part in the next evolution of business continuity, really driving cloud economics into disaster recovery. So, so here we go. Disaster recovery is always critical, and we always want to be able to protect our businesses as best as we can. But it's also a shifting. There's some shifting demands in that space in disaster recovery. And in a recent survey that we did of over 400 CTOs and heads of engineering and CIOs, we found that instead of power outages and natural disasters being the #1 driver of disaster recovery, ransomware has quickly overtaken those two drivers, those two events. And in the event of like a ransomware or most disaster recovery events, but specifically around ransomware, backup is not a sufficient business continuity tool in order to get businesses back up and running quickly. And that recovery time objective is really what it's about. Now, in addition to the numbers...
add to that.
Yeah, go ahead,
If I
Pete.
could add to that, just going to go back a second. I could tell you with ransomware, is one of the divisions that PTS I run is a cybersecurity side. We do terabytes of data every day that we're monitoring for mostly the healthcare industry. We've seen about a 500% increase in phishing and ransomware related to COVID-related things. So I would say that companies are more at risk now than they've ever been in the history of malfeasance, if you will. That's out there. So this is becoming an ever-present, a more pressing topic right now. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, and on the COVID-19 pandemic topic, we recently did another survey where we found that the desire to have disaster recovery, quick disaster recovery, to be able to provide critical business services to work from home situations is even more important now than ever. And in a surprising majority of the respondents to the survey, 94% now said that they would be willing to adopt cloud-based disaster recovery as long as it would protect all their data, including the edge. So this is a bit about the market and how it's changing and how rapidly it's changing, especially during the time that we live in now. What people want for disaster recovery has always been a quick RTO, and they want it to be easy, right? I want to push the easy button. I want to have it fail over. I want to have it fail over fast. I don't want to have to take an outage in order to provide my business services. And nowadays, we have to have ransomware recovery, because if your disaster involves some sort of data corruption, you don't want to recover corrupted data. But the problems with disaster recovery have always been that it's expensive. It touches all the tiers of the business, of the technology, often involves having to source solutions and integrate solutions from multiple vendors. And the biggest expense is often a second set of your infrastructure at another site that you have to pay for. In addition to the complexity and the expense of disaster recovery, once you get it going, even if you have the budget to afford all these things, it's often brittle. And just testing disaster recovery becomes a job in and of itself. I have a customer that I worked with who had been working, they had contracted with SunGuard for 4 years to provide their disaster recovery. And never once in 4 years were they able to achieve a fully successful disaster recovery test failover. So once you get it set, you have to maintain it. And maintaining disaster recovery is has a huge impact on whether or not it will work. So for all these factors, we came together, and here's where here's a little bit about the history of how we got here, and the problem that we're going to solve. So, historically, tape has been way back. Tape was how we all backed up our data. We all protected our data, and that was extremely clumsy, but it did the job. You were able to save your data, but whether or not you were able to restore it was another question. More recently, we've had disk-based backups, which featured global deduplication and other data efficiencies, and that was like the difference between going from your cassette tape to an iPod or an MP3 player. And that was a huge leap forward. And then those have evolved into the new types of on-premise and cloud replication type backups, which are easier to use, often can be the gateway drug for SaaS-based backup only, which all of these, or most of these, will feature some kind of disaster recovery feature, a subset of features, but they tend to take a very long time and can be very complicated. There's a lot of terms and conditions that you have to accept in order to accomplish disaster recovery with these solutions. And with Datrium, what we're doing is we're converging the backup and the DR and giving the end user everything that they wanted on that first slide: the speed to recover, the ease of use, and the efficiencies.
And Keith, would you agree that from a technical standpoint, the often overlooked element to all of that isn't just the failover, it's the failback? And the failback has been the, dare I say, the redheaded stepchild of all of this, and we probably have solved that better now than ever before.
Absolutely. If I were to tell you that I could fail your workload over to the cloud, but you can't get it back, well, then that's not a disaster recovery. That's a cloud migration. And there's going to be some complexities and some costs associated with that, which might be an unpleasant surprise in the event that you have to avail yourself of a disaster recovery.
Absolutely.
So, this is just a bit about, our expertise in this area runs deep. Our founders who came together to form Datrium and have put together and built this disaster recovery software as a service solution have deep histories in hypervisors, enterprise scale storage and solutions, and data efficiencies that, this is a bit of a dream team when it comes to how to build an enterprise class solution. So what is it? Well, with our on-demand DR, what we do is we converge our backup and our disaster recovery into one solution. So With our DRaaS Connect, we can perform a cloud backup of any data in VMware running on any storage, whether that's a storage appliance, software-defined storage, doesn't matter. Any storage, any VMware. We take a cloud backup and store that on S3 in AWS in a very efficient and very secure manner. And because of the way we store this data, we can restore it instantly without having to do any data copy or rehydration whatsoever. And because we can restore so much data so quickly without having to rehydrate or copy it, we can provide a deep history, an instantly recoverable deep history of any data retained in the cloud backup to achieve ransomware recovery so that you don't have to recover the latest copy of your corrupted data, if that's what it is, in the cloud. Additionally, to make our disaster recovery resilient and not brittle and not susceptible to configuration drift, we offer continuous compliance checking so that you know your disaster recovery plans will work before you need them.
And Keith,
so
it's
to
important
dig a
to
little
note
deeper,
that's in VMware native format, right? So we're not converting anything, unlike a lot of system products that are on the market right now. We're doing that in native VMware format throughout the whole cycle.
That's correct, Pete. VMware to VMware, no conversions necessary all throughout. And when you're doing a disaster recovery, when you're having that stress of having to move your workloads out of where they live on a day-to-day basis, is learning a new system of management tools what you really want to be involved in addition to having to wait for that to occur. So we like to think that you could get our disaster recovery as a service in 10 minutes or less. And the process by which you would do it is if you had your VMware workloads running either on-site, on some storage, or even in the cloud, which we're starting to see more primary workloads running in VMware Cloud on AWS, you would download our connector VM, which is a lightweight, stateless VM, install it into your vCenter, and connect it to our disaster recovery facility in AWS. You create your backup and disaster recovery policies through our orchestration engine, which is also software as a service. So accessible anywhere, the same way you would access your Gmail or your Netflix. Once that's been created, you store your backup. You begin transmitting your backups securely over the wire and storing them on S3. When I say we store them on S3, yeah, that's nothing new. A lot of people store data on S3, but one of the things that we do differently is we actually feature global deduplication and data efficiency that follows the data throughout its life cycle in our data plane. And what that means is, even though S3 is already a low-cost storage solution, we stretch your per gigabyte dollar even further through our data efficiency. And then finally, when you need to actually do a disaster recovery test or a failover itself, well, we automate the creation and management of the cloud resources in VMware Cloud, so you only pay for it when you need it or when you're using it. A little bit further diving into how this works is, same situation. You've got your production VMware workloads connected to our backup as a service data store in AWS. And when you need to perform your disaster recovery failover, for whatever reason, you go to our software as a service orchestration engine, select the workloads that you want to fail over and indicate that they should fail over to VMware Cloud. And then we will automatically, without having any interaction from you, build out the VMware environment in VMware Cloud. And then as soon as it's available, we will live mount our backup as a service data store as a live VMware data store from VMware Cloud, instantiate your VMs in that backup as a service, and immediately recover them. So that's a recovery with an instant RTO. As soon as this VMware Cloud is available, we instantly recover those workloads, and we can recover them from any point in time in the retained history in the backup as a service data store. Once they're recovered, you manage them the same way you do at home with the native VMware tools. There's no VM conversion to be done. And like Pete said, well, when it comes to failback, when it's time to bring those workloads back home, disasters mitigated, well, we've got you covered there too. So we automate that process. And what we'll do is we'll go back to our SaaS-based disaster recovery orchestration engine, and we'll indicate that it's time to fail back. And then you get to sit back and watch as that orchestration engine will gracefully bring down your VMs if they're not already down, incrementally resynchronize your home site. So egress costs and failback time are much lower than with a full resynchronization of the home site. And then we'll recover the workloads back home. And as soon as those workloads are verified to be back up and running and happy, we either shut down the VMware Cloud entirely or reduce it to a minimal state so that you stop paying for it and you only used it when you needed it. So automated failover, VMware to VMware, failover and failback, no VM conversion with an instant mount of our disaster recovery data store, so you have an instant RTO.
And so, Keith, if I could add to that, if you can go back that
Sure.
slide, I think it's important
Absolutely.
to note that's why PTS, who's been providing backup and disaster recovery to its clients for many years now, and as a service, this was the great attractor for me because for the first time, I could have a client only pay for disaster recovery if and when they ever have to use it outside of the testing, because we often build the cost of the testing inside there as part of the managed service and play, but they're only paying for that failover if and when they need it, and that's unprecedented in the industry, and it's a critical point.
Thanks, Pete. Failback. We have to rebuild the slide again. Shut down the VMware Cloud, and a little bit more about our backup as a service data store. So I mentioned we feature a global deduplication and data efficiency in our data store. So although S3 is, in fact, the second least expensive data facility within the cloud, we stretch that even further. So some of you may be thinking, well, can I tier my data out to Glacier? And because what we do is we have our data efficiencies built into the S3 here, and also we use the S3 as temporarily as a live data store. Glacier is not really a viable option for any of those. And when you think about the fact that we get an instant restore from any point in time, which wouldn't be possible with Glacier, we like to think that, one, the economics both make sense with deduplication and data efficiency, but also it's worth it to have that deep history and be able to restore instantly. This backup data store features a searchable catalog. So if you only wanted to restore some data and not necessarily do a full disaster recovery, well, you'd be able to search through the global catalog and find the VM and find the file that you wanted and only restore what you needed when you needed. It's not only just for disaster recovery, because remember, we're converging backup and disaster recovery.
Keith, would you agree that a lot of our customers are changing their retention policies to actually capture more data because our dedupe engine is so strong that they've always wanted to do a better retention policy or a great or more in-depth retention policy, but storage cost limitations prevented them from doing that. And with our technology, we're finding that we can build a more robust data store that could be recovered.
Absolutely. The way that we store the data as snapshots, which are synthetic full backups every single time, even though those snapshots and backups are globally deduplicated against all the data that we're storing, we find that instead of maybe a daily backup or sometimes a twice per day backup for the more critical workloads, customers who wouldn't ordinarily take a half-hourly snapshot or even an hourly snapshot are beginning to do so. I have education customers who, in the name of granularity of their recovery, if they should get hit with a ransomware, are starting to keep hourly backups for a week. And because of the deduplication and the data efficiencies, they're not impacting their data storage or ballooning up their data storage costs by any means because we do things so efficiently. So yes, I am seeing a lot of customers who use our backup software or use our backup technology take and restore a lot more data than they ordinarily would. So when it comes time to access this backup, what we do is we have a unique capability within VMware Cloud to take this backup as a service and create and mount it as a live data store. No one else can do this besides Datrium. And this is how we offer an instant RTO. So instead of having to rehydrate data out of the backup as a service, and then copy it somewhere else, and then convert the file to some other non-VMware file system, we don't have to take any of those steps. And that's how we get our zero RTO. When we wrap this all with our DR orchestration, software as a service DR orchestration, which is where we keep all of the runbooks and all of the compliance information, and all of the brains to do the automatic deployment and customization of the resources within the cloud, this is how we built our disaster recovery as a service. I mentioned that we can recover instantly from a ransomware attack. Firstly, I'll start with the middle and work my way out. Our backups, the way we store our data, even though when we need it, we turn that backup as a service into a live data store, until we need it, the data is hidden and immutable. So it's inaccessible to any sort of malware that would want to go and corrupt your backup data, which some ransomware does do now in order to back customers into a corner where they have to pay the ransom. Our data is immutable and cannot be changed. So that data is always going to be available, whether it's minutes or years old. Because we don't have to do any data copy and we don't have to do any rehydration, we have an instant availability of that data from any point in time in that retained data system. So without having to pay a price of maybe making future snapshots or earlier snapshots unavailable or unusable, we give the user the option to restore their data from any point in time instantly. And we can do that at scale. So we're not talking about just one VM or one file restored instantly. You can restore all your VMs all at once to that point in time when you know your data is not corrupted, and get all your data back. The last technical point I'm going to make here is about compliance. Configuration drift, either at the production end, on the network, or in the disaster recovery end, is what prevents disaster recovery from succeeding in almost every case. Someone changed the configuration somewhere along the line, forgot or neglected to update the configuration on the other end, or maybe someone unconnected to this, someone managing the firewall or the network, made some change that now affects your disaster recovery, and it's not going to work when you need it. Well, wouldn't it be nice if when that type of thing happened, you would be notified, hey, we have a problem with the disaster recovery plan. This plan has this problem, and it needs to be fixed in order for disaster recovery to work. Well, we offer that. Every 30 minutes, our orchestration engine will go out and poll all of the assets configured within its runbooks for accessibility and configuration and usability, such that if anything's changed so that it won't work, you would be notified and you would know. Additionally, you might want to know what happened. So whenever you do a test, whenever you do a failover, a failback, or any type of operation within this orchestration disaster recovery engine, well, we keep a history, and you'd be able to export a PDF report showing what happened, what were the results. And this is very, very convenient so that when the boss comes by and says, hey, what's my disaster recovery status? What happened with the last test? Why did it fail? Why did it succeed? Rather than have to go and write a whole email, take screenshots, and maybe make a PowerPoint presentation, we give you a handy and easy to use export to PDF, my compliance check, and my audit report gets exported into something that's easily presentable.
And Keith, I could tell you with certainty that often what would happen if you don't have this compliance check is the client sometimes makes changes to the live environment, adds a new VM. It doesn't get added to the run book. We go through testing. We find that we know that new VM has not been backed up, and hopefully we're doing that during a test cycle, and it failed because it wasn't backed up, but nobody checked that disaster recovery runbook. And having this 30-minute sanity check, if you will, saves a lot, and it's the primary reason why you're going to, we have that, and it's a unique feature. And so I can tell you firsthand, it's valuable.
Yep, totally agree. Coming from a background where we did biannual or semi-annual, I should say, disaster recovery checks at a large bank in New York, it's nice to have that audit report instead of having to walk around with a checklist.
Agreed.
So just a few examples, a few real-world examples of customers that have deployed our disaster recovery as a service with Datrium and why they did it. So this is an organization where they had 1,500 VMs and a petabyte of storage. They wanted to use the cloud. They wanted to leverage the cloud. They don't want to have to maintain a second site any longer. And what they were going to do was they were going to go with a combination of Nutanix for primary storage, which actually they were already running, and Cohesity for their backups and disaster recovery. Well, the disadvantages here was that with all the, even though they would get some cloud efficiencies with S3, where Cohesity would store the backup, in order to do a disaster recovery, the time it would take to rehydrate and copy a petabyte of data, and then once that was available, leverage expensive AWS EC2 assets to convert those files from VMware to AWS, because Cohesity is incapable of recovering to any other cloud other than AWS native. It would take them about 22 whole days to recover their data to one point in time. And that was an unacceptable recovery time objective for them. Additionally, they didn't want to have to deal with learning a new virtual machine management paradigm in the cloud during a disaster. So they chose Datrium for the simplicity, meaning VMware to VMware. It's a single button to click, and it's an instant RTO. That's why they chose Datrium over this other solution, which even though they get their cloud DR and cloud backup, we've converged those two. What's not here on the slide, and even is even though they might have been able to do their failover in 22 days, failback would be a manual process for them, which I don't know about any of you, but I wouldn't appreciate that myself. Having to figure that out and then take another 22 days or however long it would be in order to bring my workloads home. The second case I'll talk about, this was a government agency, again, Nutanix customer. They needed to do monthly compliance testing for disaster recovery. And even though with the rubric and Zerto orchestration working in tandem, they would achieve a lower RTO, much lower in this case of about 2 to 3 days. You know, that's a tough sell if you want to do a full disaster recovery test. I'd like to think that a test should be, you know, a pretty quick and painless operation. They again would have to do their VMware, their VM refactoring, and Zerto doesn't include any failback. So combined with all the EC2 assets and all the drawbacks here, we were able to show them that they could do a cloud-based backup with disaster recovery baked into it, where they would be able to do their disaster recovery testing with on-demand assets, on-demand resources, so no EC2 resources sitting around soaking up money, and be able to do it painlessly with our instant RTO. So they wouldn't have to wait around for 2 days for their data to become available and converted in order to check and see if their DR plans were going to work. We were also able to show them that with our efficiencies, where everything is on demand, they would be able to achieve, versus this solution with Nutanix, Rubrik, and Zerto, over an 80% lower total cost of ownership for the lifespan of the solution. So to sum it up, with Datrium DRaaS, you know, we like to make it as simple as possible. If you check my LinkedIn profile, you could see my statement, my mission statement is to simplify IT. And we always want to make things as simple as possible and take the complex and make it easy. So you, the customer, what you need to do with our disaster recovery is you pick your SLAs, you create your DR plans, which Pete and PTS would be happy to help you work on those and test those, whereas we're going to provide you, for all these moving parts and pieces, a single point of support. You're going to have your automated disaster recovery with our software as a service orchestration, our efficient backup storage, and we give you our own terms of service. So you don't have to go and manage multiple vendors, multiple cloud providers, multiple software. It's a single stop, software as a service to achieve disaster recovery with Datrium and PTS. In the end, you know, should you go with disaster recovery from us, you know, what you're going to get, just to reiterate, you're going to get your cloud backup. You'll have an instant RTO without having to do data copy, data rehydration, which, as you know, we've shown can take days in order to accomplish a disaster recovery. You get ransomware recovery built in with deep, instantly recoverable history of backups, and it's plug and play. You don't have to change out your infrastructure. The only thing to download and install is a VM that you plug into your environment and connects your vSphere VMware environment to our disaster recovery as a service running in the cloud. So if you want to learn a little bit more about or dig a little deeper into our DRaaS, there's a few links here we have on the screen. Both about, you know, how we work together with VMware Cloud and AWS. Some of if you want to learn about how we store our data and efficiently make it available such that it's a natural solution for ransomware, so that you don't have to pay a ransom when or if that happens to you, we have a white paper there. And then we have some stories. We have some actual customer stories, some of whom have had to deal with ransomware and recover both ways, either from a disk-to-disk tape, I mean, a disk-to-disk backup, or also, you know, with our solution. Finally, I guess I'll take some questions. I see there's a few in the audience. Pete, do you have any final comments before we dive into some of these questions?
Yeah, thanks. Other than to say that some of the white papers are in the attachments and links section, I believe, as part of this presentation. So, you know, feel free to help yourself, you know, to those as well. And so there are a couple. I guess I'll read through some of them. Some of them I think we answered. We'll go to the first one here. Why do I need a converged backup and DR solution? Shouldn't I go with the best of breed solution for both? Presumably meaning separate solutions for both backup and the recovery. So I know what my answer would be, but why don't you, Keith, say, well, why do we think a converged backup DR solution is better?
Yeah. Well, you know, there are two things that really go hand in hand. And in my history, they've often been separate systems. Why converging them is of value is when you do that. So a disaster recovery tends to be, you know, orchestration and sometimes data replication, but not backup. So you miss out on ransomware, and you have ransomware recovery because you have no history or short history. And then you have this disaster recovery solution, which is its own beast and has to be integrated and managed and purchased as its own solution. It's not necessarily going to talk to backup or integrate well with backup. We see some of that now, but still it's a separate solution and you have to do the integration on your own. When you have backup converged with disaster recovery, well, you know, one, you're eliminating a point of integration, and all these points of integration are points of management and points where solutions can fail. You eliminate a point of procurement, which, you know, contract management can be, you know, we all have to do it, but do we want to? And then also, you get, when you converge backup with disaster recovery, you get ransomware recovery built into your disaster recovery. If you have to recover the latest copy of your data in DR and that latest copy is corrupted, then your disaster recovery is worthless. So that's some of the reasons why you would converge those two rather than go best of breed for both. What do you think?
Yeah, I have to concur, right? For me, it's easy to summarize it. One, it's cheaper, right? And cheaper, you know, that's always, you know, so it costs less to do it. And it does that because it's an integrated solution, so therefore it performs better. And so those are, you know, the two primary reasons why I like having them in the both solutions, because of the integrated nature of them. I don't have to relearn anything. It costs me less and it performs better. Second question I see come up here, somebody's asking, why do I need an instant RTO? And I think everybody knows what RPO and RTO, but why don't you, Keith, just a quick RPO, RTO, and why do we want an instant RTO?
Sure. Yeah, RPO would be the recovery point objective, which I like to say sort of professorially is, you know, is the answer to the question of how much data can you lose as a function of time. So how far back in time can you lose some data when you have to do a failover? How much is your data worth? Recovery time objective is how long does it take to get that data and make it available and get your applications back up. So a recovery time objective, why do I need an instant recovery time objective? Well, you know, how long do you want to wait to get your applications back up? How long do you want to wait to get your business services back up and running? Instant RTO, I like to think instant's always going to be better than having to wait around.
I agree completely. And our RPO, our replication is based on snapshotting, right? So we maximize the limits of the VMware capability for our RPO capabilities. And so, but RTO, probably the more important part of the equation is how fast can I be up and back and running.
If you have an RPO, of 10 minutes. That is, you're going to lose 10 minutes in your disaster recovery, but your disaster recovery takes 4 days to bring your applications back up. What was the point?
Right. Yep, exactly the point. And then another question is, can you tell me what is checked in the compliance, all that's checked in the compliance, and why do I need to check all those things every 30 minutes? And so, again, why don't you run through the compliance checking on, of the DR run book and on the production environment? I don't know if you even know all of the areas that it's checked.
Oh, I don't know all the areas or every point that's touched, but I could hit some of the highlights. For one thing, what we do is we check for network access and connectivity between the two sites. So that is, can the orchestration engine communicate with both sites and all the assets and resources that it needs at both sites? We check to make sure that the virtual environments are set up properly. That is, the networks that you say you're going to be failing over from or to are available. We check to make sure that the data stores are running right. We check to make sure that data replication is healthy. There are certainly cases where replication might not be healthy. And when we do a cloud failover, we check to make sure that the cloud management resources are available to us. There are orchestration tools and management tools in VMware Cloud that need to be available for us to, both configure and scale a VMware Cloud environment. So we check to make sure that all those things are available and usable in the same format as they were entered into the runbook. And every 30 minutes, it's a bit of a compromise between, let's check all the time and, and burn it up. And every half hour seemed like a pretty reasonable compromise in terms of how often we're going to do this. It's still 48 times or nearly 50 times a day that we're going to check all plans for all those points of contact.
Great, thanks. I don't see any more questions from the audience, and so I guess we can conclude. I just like to offer as a wrap-up, that the process for doing this and moving forward, I could tell you that it's probably the most cost-effective disaster recovery as a service offering that I've ever brought to my clients, and that has been a resounding, happy moment for everybody in that you're not paying through the nose for this, and a big attribute of that is the on-demand performance of failover and failback. The fact that your limited exposure, which oftentimes is paid by your insurance policies anyway, and so why have to pay for that all of the time? And so the process by which we do this is that you could reach out to Keith and or I, and I hope you do, and we can help profile your environment to understand what your needs are from all of your VMs and all of your physical hosts and what your RPO and RTO objectives are. And we can help engineer a solution that is tailored specifically to what you guys are looking for. And we can usually turn around a quote, inside a day and have it up and running very soon upon contracting. That's the beauty of it. Getting this up and running is literally 10 minutes to do it, which was our title of our presentation. So do you have anything to add to that, Keith? Otherwise,
no, great wrap up. Thanks, Pete, and thanks to everyone who joined. Unless there's any other questions, I guess we'll wrap it up here.
Yep, look at that. We're almost 45 minutes on the nose. I want to thank everybody. Have a good day.